and welcome back to the most amazing channel on the internet. I am your host, Rebecca Felgate, and today we are getting into those aliens once again as we talk the top 10 scary alien encounters reported by the military. So a little known fact, I'm actually leaving the channel soon, so it may be my last chance to do this for you, so I'm gonna do it right, okay? Are you ready? Aliens, 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 they come from space, they say hi, let's fly with the aliens. Aliens, 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 see you with me now, aliens, aliens, aliens. Thank you for being our friends and not vaporizing us with your lasers. Thank you. And also, seriously though, thank you for everything. So, now that we're done with that, let me ask you, do you believe in aliens? You're probably glad I'm leaving now, I won't do that to you ever again. Boo-hoo. If you like our content, please do leave a thumbs up, share this video with a friend, check out the links in our description box for our sources, and also our most amazing Instagrams where you can connect with us personally. Alright, I'm feeling like an idiot, but we're just gonna do this. Coming in at number 10, we have Project Twinkle. A number of green fireballs in the sky over United States military bases promoted Project Twinkle in 1949. On the evening of December the 5th, 1948, two plane crashes, one military in Albuquerque and one civilian in Las Vegas, reported that they had seen green balls of fire. The military crew reported that the light was huge, like a green meteor that strangely curved upwards rather than hurtling to Earth. On top of that, just 3 days later, two United States Air Force of Special Investigations workers witnessed a green fireball when they were flying an aircraft. Throughout December of that year, more Air Force workers saw the phenomenon. Then, on January the 30th, 1949, the biggest and most widely seen green fireball was sighted near Roswell. Hello. This led to the Air Force classifying the incident as top secret. Now, a year after the first fireball was spotted, Project Twinkle began. Twinkle was able to record a few events, but the data was inconclusive. Goodness gracious, green balls of fire, right? Coming in at number 9, we have the Finnish Air Force sighting. The Finnish Air Force have only ever officially acknowledged one UFO sighting, and that was in April 1969 in Pori. 7 yellow disc-shaped objects were seen hovering in a formation above Pori Airport. When a fighter pilot was scrambled to intercept the UFOs, they accelerated away at an incredible speed. In the same minute, they were spotted on radar 200 kilometers away, which is nigh on impossible. A plane chased after them at 700 kilometers an hour, but they were not able to catch up. There was actually an Oscar award-winning documentary about the case called Visitors from Space, which you should check out. Links again in the description. Ooh, this is a good one. Coming into number 8, we have Foo Fighters. And no, I don't mean the awesome band fronted by Dave Grohl. Also good though. I mean the UFO sightings by Allied pilots in World War II. The 415th Squadron, a United States Air Force unit, were flying over the Rhine in Germany in November 1944 when they saw multicolored lights they described being like Christmas lights, but in the sky. The objects flew alongside their aircraft at 200 miles per hour. They were described as being red, orange, green, and white. They appeared singularly, but sometimes they would appear in formations of 10. It was also said that they could outmaneuver the airplanes they were flying against. The squadron then called it in. Historian Richard Zybart said, "The pilots were very professional. They gave the report, they talked about the lights, but they didn't speculate about them." Foo Fighters were also seen by the 8th Air Force of the United Kingdom over Belgium, and again by the United States Air Forces in the South Pacific by the military in the 1960s. At the time, there were theories that actually they were a secret Nazi weapon, or indeed aliens. To this day, we don't know who or what the Foo Fighters were. All my life I've been searching for something, something never comes, never leads to aliens. I think that's what Dave Grohl was trying to tell us. Coming into number 7, we have ghost rockets. Swedish military defense were on high alert when they spotted rockets in February 1946, some 5 months after the First World War informally ended. About 2,000 sightings were logged between May and December 1946 by military personnel, but just 200 were recorded on radar. The Swedish army released a photograph of one of the rockets, which is still an unsolved mystery to this day. No targets were ever reported to have been struck, but at the time, it was thought that they were long-range test missiles from the Soviets. This was largely rejected though, because fragments were never officially found. Reports were made of objects crashing into lakes. A witness even saw a grey rocket fall into Lake Kolmarv in June of 1946. The Swedish military underwent several dive missions in a number of lakes to try and even look for these ghost missiles, but they found nothing other than, I guess, like craters and slightly disturbed aquatic life. The military opinion from both Sweden and the United States was not officially decided upon, but a declassified document from the time suggests that some were convinced that they were alien flying saucers. By 1947, the ghost rockets had stopped, so what were they? War nerves or aliens? You decide at number 6. We have the infamous Battle of Los Angeles. Between February the 24th and 25th, 1942, just a few months after Pearl Harbor, a large number of flared and bright lights were reported near defense stations in LA. It seems that naval intelligence on the Californian coast warned of a potential attack that evening, and military radar suggested that there was indeed enemy contact. People were freaked out, the city was blackened and air raid sirens sounded. Strange lights were spotted in the sky over Santa Monica, leading to troops firing machine guns into the sky. One coastal artilleryman claimed to have seen 6 planes, but after 1,400 rounds of anti-aircraft ammunition fired into the sky, nothing was ever shot down. There was no attack. Or was there? Secretary of War Henry Stimson echoed army brass in saying that at least 15 planes had buzzed into the city. Some people concluded that it was psychological warfare on the part of the Japanese. Others straight up believed that it was aliens. Those pesky aliens. We have viral aliens up next at number 5. We have the USS Nimitz Incident. Objects were detected in restricted military training airspaces in November 2004, and video was subsequently released of a Navy fighter jet interception of a UFO over the Pacific Ocean. The footage was leaked to the press in 2017 and quickly went viral, but many were quick to claim that it just wasn't authentic. However, just a couple of days ago, as of the scripting of this video in 2019, the United States Navy have actually confirmed that the video is authentic and does include unidentified flying objects. The Navy is trying to update their protocol for pilots reporting UFOs in order to reduce the stigma. We still have absolutely no idea what the UFO was. Coming into number 4, we have 2014 to 2015. Get ready, because this is heavy. An article in Rolling Stone magazine claimed that the United States Navy had reported UFOs on a near daily basis between Virginia and Florida in 2014 and 2015. This also seemed to be confirmed by the New York Times. Now, the sightings began in the summer of 2014 when Navy pilots reported UFOs 30,000 feet into the sky, reaching hypersonic speeds as they were conducting training maneuvers below. According to Lieutenant Danny Acoin, the objects had no distinct wing, no distinct tail, no distinct exhaust pipe. He continued by saying it seemed as if the objects were aware of their presence because they would actively move around them. Further to that, at the same time, further Navy pilots were reporting an influx of unidentified flying objects off the east coast to the Pentagon. What was going on? Coming into number 3, we have the Kinross Incident. In November 1953, a United States Air Force pilot disappeared after investigating a UFO over Lake Superior on the border to Canada. Felix Monclar scrambled an F-89C Scorpion jet from the Kinross Air Force Base with another member of the Air Force, Robert Wilson, acting as a radar operator down below. Ground control claims that the UFO and the plane grew close on the radar screen. They were going towards each other, and then at one point they even seemed to merge. The then unidentified object continued its previous course, and the plane disappeared. Searchers were sent out for it. It was never found. A search was indeed conducted, and it seems that parts of the plane may have been uncovered several years later in 1968, but the identity of the parts was never published. Many think it was all a ruse. The body of Monclar was never found, and neither was any trace of the UFO, so we just don't know what happened that night. There have been a number of military whistleblowers over the years. At number 2, I want to talk about Charles Hall and the Tall Whites. Charles Hall used to serve in the United States military as part of the Air Force, stationed in, wait for it, Nevada, aka the home of Area 51. Although it seems that Hall, who worked as a meteorologist, was actually based at the Nellis Air Force Base, which was around an hour away from Area 51, but still. Hall claims that back in the 1960s, the Air Force were actually in cahoots with aliens. He said that the United States military exchanged technology with quote-unquote tall whites, a blonde-haired human-like race of aliens. Hall continued by saying that there was a hangar at the base. Now I quote, "A ship would come into the side of the mountain on the nights of a full moon." I mean, what? Hall also claimed that aliens would travel with CIA agents to Las Vegas casinos for entertainment. Rightio then. That actually does go hand in hand with a lot of other alien conspiracy theories out there though. A lot of people do think that the government have been working with aliens for a long time. I honestly don't know what to say about the Las Vegas bit though. Even crazier at number 1, this comes from Canada's former defense minister Paul Hellyer, so how can we argue? This is crazy, hold on to your hats, because if not, they're getting blown away. Paul Hellyer used to hold one of the top jobs in Canada. He's an engineer with a long career in politics and military logistics. The man claims to have helped found the International UFO Landing Pad in Alberta. In 2005, he claimed to have seen UFO for himself, and in 2014, he confirmed the existence of tall whites. He said that he was aware of at least 4 species of aliens that have been visiting planet Earth for thousands of years. He claimed that 2 of the species are directly working with the United States. He also claimed that the different species are from different places and they should not be considered as one entity because they have different agendas. He says that the aliens that humans have encountered do not think that we're good stewards of our planet, and I'm inclined to agree. Hellyer is still a member of the Privy Council in Canada and is, by and large, a very credible source.
Number 10. This is probably the earliest reported alien encounter that I've come across on the internet. Back in 1896, a man was traveling to Lodi, California by horse and carriage when all of a sudden his horses got startled by something in the distance. The man said that he can see 3 strange beings on the side of the road. These odd looking creatures were very skinny and stood at about 7 feet tall. They were all bald except they had a velvet soft material that covered their entire body. They spoke in a strange language and they were holding a weird mineral that emitted a very bright light. The aliens tried to pick up the man, but he was too heavy for them. Eventually they moved away and they began to float above the ground. The man followed them and then he said that they floated into a huge, like cigar-shaped spaceship into the air and he never saw them again. Sounds to me like this guy is either seriously sleep deprived or he was definitely smoking something. A terrifying alien abduction breaks onto this list at number 9. Amy Rylance probably had the most terrifying moment of her life when she was apparently abducted by an alien back in October 2001. Her friend Petra woke up one night and saw Amy being carried in a sleeping position out through the window on a beam of lights to a huge ship. It sounds to me like Petra probably took too many drugs that night, I don't know.
No, I don't drink. I don't take drugs at all. I'm just a normal person.
Well, there goes my theory. Petra ran to wake up Amy's husband, but by the time they made it back downstairs, Amy was gone. The curtain was ripped and the bushes outside of the window were burnt. They called the police, but they obviously didn't take them seriously because their story sounds absolutely insane. But before you write their story off, listen to this. Amy's husband received a call from a woman who lives 8 hours away. She said that she is with Amy at a hospital who is getting treatment for being dazed and dehydrated.
I have other marks from the tests that they did on me.
What sort of tests?
Just getting kind of DNA samples, and they didn't do anything bad to me, so it was wholly a good experience from my point of view.
No one has any logical explanation as to how she traveled such a far distance in such a short time frame. Amy said she remembers laying on a bed with tall figures leaning over her, and then they were taking a bunch of samples. So I don't know what was going on. And now a river abduction comes in at number 8. In 1979, 2 co-workers were fishing off a pier when they heard a strange buzzing sound. When they took a look around, they saw a mysterious flashing blue lights. A UFO started to come down closer to them, and 3 alien-looking creatures dragged them on board of the spacecraft. Inside, the 2 co-workers were heavily examined for about 20 minutes before they were levitated back to the pier. After the incident, they ran to the police station to report what happened to them.
I was hunting a place to run, but it was nowhere to run. There was water in the front, water on the side, but immediately when they got a hold of us, I felt a little sharp something, and they must have gave me a shot to relax me.
Calvin, sorry. We have to stop you for a second because this must have been absolutely terrifying. I mean, you're in a UFO with aliens, and what are they doing to you? They're sort of giving you an MRI and examination. That's what you thought was happening.
Of course, no one believed them, and they were just seen as two crazy people. And now at number 7, whether you call this one lucky or unlucky, we have the Clayton and Donna Lee abduction. A husband and wife from Texas are claiming that they have been abducted by aliens on multiple occasions, not just one time. They struck multiple times. Donna Lee reported that she was taken while she was pregnant, and she lost her child due to the alien abduction. Maybe they took it? I don't know. Her husband Clayton said that they have been abducted numerous times throughout his life, and he remembers his first abduction happened when he was a little boy at a park. He remembered floating into the sky and seeing stars, and then complete darkness before he passed out. He even has a scar on his side and believes that it was caused by aliens who were attempting to take DNA samples from him.
Did you see the aliens?
Yes.
What did they look like?
What I saw on that particular visit, they were tall, slender, blonde, looked human, but not human, not quite human. They didn't really use their voices to talk. For me, about being abducted is they bring me back. I'm here.
Well, maybe they won't someday, Donna. Maybe they'll take you to wherever they live.
They might not, but so far they have. So you can't live in that kind of fear and still have a life.
What was the last time?
Sounds like she enjoys being abducted. I don't know. A scary alien encounter brings us to number 6. Barney and Betty Hill were driving back to their house after they took a vacation in Niagara Falls. While driving, they saw a light in the sky that looked like it was getting closer to them. Eventually, it appeared as a huge shape hovering over their car. Barney got out and used his binoculars to look up above them. He was able to see 11 humanoid figures in shiny black uniforms and capes, and they were all watching them. If that was me, I'd race into my car and drive faster than Van Diesel and get the hell out of there. That's exactly what they tried to do, but they both said that they experienced a strange buzzing sensation, but they were able to make it back home alive. But they weren't untouched. Their clothes have been torn in strange places, and Betty found a strange pink residue on her dress. She also experienced really intense and vivid dreams about the experience, and she even remembers having skin samples taken from her and injections were put into her belly button. Here is an actual audio clip from a hypnosis session that the couple had after their encounter. Listen to this.
Alright, dear Captain, what is he? You're still asleep, but you can see it all clearly. Looks like a big pancake with windows. Get away from me!
Something very traumatic had happened to them.
The Travis Walton abduction story crashes onto this list at number 5. This story is actually really interesting. Let's travel back to November 1975, where 6 forestry workers in Arizona reported seeing their work colleague Travis Walton blasted through the air in a beam of light that came from a UFO. They called the police and reported him as missing, but during the investigation, the police suspected that the workers actually murdered Travis Walton and that they had disposed of the body. But this is where things get pretty interesting. 5 days later, Travis reappeared and he claimed that he was abducted by aliens. He said that he woke up on a table and he was surrounded by small figures in orange gowns. Maybe he woke up in a prison. I don't know. Maybe there is an answer for that. Well, he said that their skin was very smooth, but it was chalky, and their bald heads were too big for their bodies. He managed to escape from the aliens, but he went into a room that had humans in it, but they were dressed in blue uniforms. This makes it seem like more of a prison. Well, they never spoke to him, but they captured him and put a gas mask on him, and he lost consciousness. But he does remember waking up confused on a strange road in Arizona. A strange alien abduction case is at number 4. Hillary Porter is known as the woman who has been abducted by aliens more times than she can count.
And you believe that you may have something inside your right ear.
Yes, definitely.
Explain.
A little bit like a telescope. It's got 3 sections, yes. Very, very minute. Then the rest goes down into my flesh, into the ear. Okay. And this thing sometimes comes right out to the very edge. It depends what I'm doing. It seems like it.
So you sometimes feel it moving.
Oh, yeah, you got that feel, and it's slightly longer some days and retracts a tiny bit. And then it was like I was just laying down to go to sleep, and like a little voice came from it and said, "Good night."
Okay.
Okay, how creepy would that be? The first encounter that she remembers was when she was like 5 years old and she was playing behind her home. She said that she remembers seeing a reptile looking alien standing in front of her. It had scaly skin, black holes on the nose, and a little mouth. She said that the creature grabbed her arms and pulled her underneath a disc that was located in the fields. They performed a ton of painful tests on her and then they let her go hours later. She said that she'd been abducted a bunch of times and she actually suffered from migraines and feels really sick. Sometimes she even wakes up with fresh scars or bruises, or there are bloody marks and stains on her clothes or bed sheets. Okay, a bizarre alien abduction takes us to number 3. Back in October 1957, a man named Antonioboris claimed that he saw a red star in the sky. The light traveled closer to him until Antonio was able to see that it was a frickin' spaceship. It landed on its 3 legs in the nearby field. Antonio tried to escape on his tractor, and he was grabbed by a strange creature with big blue eyes. He claimed that he was taken aboard of the spaceship, where he was covered by a gel-like substance, and that's so that they can crossbreed. Eventually he was taken off to the ship and he landed on Earth 4 hours later. He was taken to a hospital where they found burns on his body and lesions. He also felt nauseous and had extremely severe headaches. The doctor later diagnosed him as suffering from radiation sickness. We have another disturbing alien encounter, and this brings us to number 2. Peter Corey remembers one night back in 1988 as the day that he was abducted by aliens. He was laying in his bed when all of a sudden he felt something grab him by his ankle. He instantly felt pins and needles, and then he couldn't feel his body anymore. He was paralyzed. When he woke up, he saw 3 strange looking creatures around his bed just staring at him. They had gold skin with tiny slits for mouths. They had large black eyes, and he said that they can tell that the aliens communicated telepathically. They inserted a needle into his skull and then he just blacked out. If you thought that was bad, his second alien encounter was even worse. He said that the female aliens with long white hair appeared over his bed and they tried to mate with him. After the encounter, he saw lots of white hairs on his bed, so he had the DNA analyzed and it was confirmed that this hair was biologically different from human hair. I can't even deal with this story, so let's move on. The abduction of Jesse Long tops this list at number 1. This alien encounter is probably the most popular story out there, so some of you guys might have heard of it. Jesse was just 5 years old when he claimed that he was abducted by aliens for the first time. He said that he was exploring the woods with his brother when all of a sudden they found a round structure in a clearing. A tall, mysterious figure approached the boys and paralyzed them. Jesse said that he remembers being taken to a spacecraft and placed onto a cold table where he felt his legs being poked and prodded by the tall figures. Over the years, Jesse said that he has been abducted many times. He said that he was being constantly experimented on, and they even took sperm samples that they used to crossbreed with a female alien.
Placed on a table, I was presented with a baby, was told, "This is your child."
I don't know about you guys, but that is probably the most disturbing story I've ever heard of. I'm actually so terrified. I really hope that aliens don't come find me if they're actually out there somewhere.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the red light. This one comes from Reddit user Nihilistic Dawn. One night a few years ago, he went with his friend as he drove his girlfriend back. They decided to take the long way home. As they drove along a deserted back road, he began to zone out. He was staring at a blinking red light off in the distance and thought to himself, I wonder why they built a cell phone tower all the way out here. Suddenly, the light blinked and was a lot closer than it was a moment earlier. His friend stopped the car and pointed out the red light. It blinked again and then was directly in front of them. The red glow was so bright it flooded the entire car in a deep scarlet hue. He leaned forward so that he could see directly into the light. He felt a wave of negative emotions wash over him. It felt like he was being examined under some sort of giant microscope. He looked away from the light and told his friend to drive, who quickly snapped out of his trance and started driving. As they got further down the road, he realized the red light wasn't fading and the interior of the car was bathed in red. He turned around and saw that to his horror, the light was following them. It then veered off into some trees. His friend stopped the car again, stared at the light and said he was going to follow it. He told his friend that they had to leave, which seemed to snap him out of it. They left, and after discussing it with some friends, they are now convinced the light was not from Earth and that that something had been done to them. Coming in at number 9 now, we have the truth. One Reddit user told a story about her mum. Her mum had a friend called Lisa. When they were both teenagers, they were on the roof of Lisa's house one night when they saw a bright light in the sky. Suddenly, the light was gone. When they checked the time, they were shocked to see that instead of 15 minutes passing, they'd apparently been there for 3 hours. A few months later, she moved house and lost contact with Lisa for 10 years. When they finally met up again, she noticed something was strange about Lisa. Lisa seemed distant, dreamy, peaceful, but for no obvious reason. The conversation turned to that night on the roof all those years ago. Lisa said she now remembered everything that happened. At first she was confused and scared, but the memory eventually returned clearly. She said that aliens abducted them and that it had happened to her at least 3 times after. At first, the aliens had paralyzed her and did invasive experiments on her. On the most recent abduction though, they didn't probe her, they just talked to her instead. She said they didn't speak English but could understand everything she said. They told her secrets about space, Earth, and predictions about her own life, which actually came true later on. Lisa said that every time she speaks with them, she comes closer to the truth, and that once someone knows the truth, everything will become wonderful. Next up at number 8 now, we have the brain drain. This one comes from a Reddit user called Girl Named Riley. She said that when she was in the 6th grade, she woke up with 4 very small holes on her upper right thigh. It looked like the skin had been cut out in perfect tiny circles, yet there was no blood. The circles were in a straight line and across her thigh horizontally. They were no more than 6 inches wide. She also felt very tired and couldn't remember what she had dreamt the night before. This was weird for her because she usually remembered every dream she had. She patched up the holes and went to school like normal that day. The next morning, she woke up to find 3 new holes right above the previous 4. She was tired again and was weirded out by how perfectly symmetrical the holes were. Her mum brushed it off as probably just spider bites or something. The next morning, there were 2 more bites above the others. The next morning, just 1. It was at that point she realized they had formed a perfect triangle. That night, she was too scared to go to bed, but woke up not remembering falling asleep. She threw off the blanket and found that the holes had completely gone. There were no scabs or scarring. Her mum said they must have just healed. Here's the weirdest part. She said that after this, she lost her ability to work with numbers. She'd always excelled in maths all her life, but after this incident, it was like numbers had no meaning and she couldn't figure out simple equations. To this day, she can't even do simple addition without having to check it multiple times. The only adding up that she's confident with is that this all adds up to some sort of alien abduction. What do you guys think? Is there perhaps a rational explanation for all this? Moving on to number 7 now, we have the time slip. This one comes from Reddit user Punchy. He said he remembers one hot summer night as a kid when he was sitting on his bed and he had a bad feeling. It was more than just a feeling though. He knew something was coming to get him. It felt like a horrifying recurrence was about to happen again, one that his body remembered but his mind did not. He knew it was close as well. The thing that was coming for him might even see him already. He was terrified beyond his wits, but he didn't even know why. That actually scared him even more. There was nothing he could do to stop it. He sat there on his bed for a few moments while these thoughts ran through his head. He turned around slowly to scan his room, and then suddenly it was the next morning. Just like that, it had gone from night to morning in a second. He was still fully dressed. He felt well rested despite only a second passing, a second he had actually been awake for. He went downstairs and got on with his day. He told his family and friends what happened, and they just acted like it was nothing and brushed the whole thing off. He couldn't though, and in the years since then he's become convinced that his body knew best. He had been abducted by aliens, and it wasn't the first time either. Next up at number 6 now, we have Betty and Barney. This is a very famous case from the 60s. Betty and Barney Hill were a couple returning from a trip to Canada to their home in New Hampshire. As they drove through the remote White Mountains, Betty noticed a star that seemed to be following their car. Barney pulled the car over and looked at the light through some binoculars. He said he saw red, amber and green flashing lights. As they got closer, they reported seeing bipedal humanoid creatures looking out of the window. Panicked, he jumped back in the car and started speeding down the road. When they got home, they realized realized the journey had taken 2 hours longer than expected. They couldn't remember what happened during those 2 hours. Within days of their sighting, Betty began having nightmares involving her being taken aboard this flying saucer and then being medically examined. Through therapy, they began to remember more details of their supposed abduction. You guys can actually find the tapes of these very therapy sessions online, and they're pretty creepy to listen to, I won't lie. If you're interested in this kind of stuff though, I highly recommend looking them up. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the false memory. This one comes from Reddit user Curtis187. He said that one night as a kid, he went down to get a drink of water from his kitchen at about 4 in the morning. As he filled up his glass, he heard a low-pitched buzzing sound coming from outside. He went out to his backyard and looked up to see, in his own words, a bright round object hovering about 600 feet above him. He froze there. It was almost like he was paralyzed for a moment. He watched as it ascended higher into the air and then took off at an incredible speed before disappearing into the clouds. That night, he had a dream that he had been abducted by aliens. In the years since then, he always wondered if the dream was what actually happened, but it was just made to seem like it was a dream. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Tentpoles. This one comes from Reddit, where a user shared a story from their father-in-law. He said he was once camping in the northern Appalachian Mountains with about 4 other people. They hiked up near a lake and set up a campsite. He said they all remember swimming and then eating dinner, but no one remembers cleaning up the camp or even going into their tents. They woke up about 10 yards away from their original site. Everything seemed to have just shifted 10 yards. They thought they were imagining it at first, but when they looked 10 yards away, they found tent peg holes from where their tents originally were. They weren't imagining it, their tents really had moved, and it was about to get creepier. They grabbed a measuring tape and measured the distance between the holes. For every single tent, the distance was exactly the same, right down to the inch. To this day, the father-in-law refuses to hike that trail, and many people tell him he was abducted by careless aliens who didn't put their camp back exactly where they found it. At number 3 now, guys, we have the lights. This one comes from Nerdy by Nature. She said that she was once camping in northern Georgia with some friends. It started to rain, so everyone left their tents and decided to rent one of the on-site cabins. She decided to just sleep in her car because the others wanted to stay up late. She woke up to the rain at 3 a.m. It was cold, and so she trekked over to her tent. It was the last one in the row, and she had to go past everyone else's to get there. After 10 minutes of trying to get to sleep, she began to hear whispers outside the tent door. They weren't in English, and to her recollection, were not in any language that she recognized. Just as the two voices started, 2 orbs appeared together outside the tent. They began floating around the tent as the whispers grew louder. As the orbs circled the tent, she noticed there weren't any footsteps. She huddled herself up and was the most terrified she had ever been. She closed her eyes, the lights swirled faster, the voices grew louder, her mind raced, and she began sweating despite the cold. And then, just like that, the lights shut off. The whispers stopped, and there was nothing but silence in the woods around her. She waited till dawn before stepping out of her tent. She shared her story because she was convinced that she was visited by or abducted by aliens that very night. Next up at number 2 now, we have the owl. This one comes from Reddit user Mikey Shikari. He said that when he was 13 years old, he believed extraterrestrial beings were following him around. He used to have sudden urges to go outside in the middle of the night and just look up at the stars. Often he would see triangular-shaped aircraft hovering over him and then just disappear. The house he lived in seemed to be haunted because he heard voices and saw non-human shaped shadows through the corner of his eye. The creepiest part was that when he would go places, an owl would always seem to be following him around. Everywhere he went, the same owl would be within his surroundings. The owl would also let him get close to it, but it was always a few feet too high for him to actually touch. This lasted about 6 months, but the worst was yet to come. One night he was in bed but fully awake and scared because he felt like he was surrounded by a group of people even though he couldn't see anyone. They were speaking in whispers and he couldn't make out what they were saying. Then he remembered being lifted up and thrown down onto his bed. He was in a state of panic and then looked at the door to see his dad stood there in shock in the doorway holding his gun. He said he heard noises and that when he opened the bedroom door, he saw his son floating above the bed, so he ran and grabbed his gun. After that night, the owl and the feeling of being watched over ended forever. And finally, at number 1 now, we have loss of hearing. This one comes from Reddit user Negative Caps. In 1997, when he was 8 years old, he was playing in the sand volleyball court at the park near his home in Colorado Springs. He was engrossed in his activity, burying his collection of Happy Meal toys in the sand and then digging them out to do it all over again. You know, kid stuff. He looked down, but suddenly decided that he needed to look up because, well, the whole world around him had suddenly lost all sound. There was nothing. No ambient noises, no traffic noises from the busy streets nearby, no dogs barking, no birds chirping, nothing. He looked at the street nearby, and that's when he saw it. A craft that looked like a stealth bomber turned sideways. It was completely shiny black in color, as tall as a house and shaped like an arrowhead. It was gliding down the road slowly. He watched it for 20 seconds. As soon as it passed behind some houses and out of sight, he got his hearing back in full force. To this day, he is convinced that he had been abducted or probed by the aliens in that craft, and the hearing loss was an unfortunate side effect.
Let's get started with John Lennon, one of the most famous musicians to have ever lived. Sure, he may have done some drugs, but I'm reasonably certain that that was unrelated. Definitely. John Lennon believed that he was abducted by aliens as a child in Liverpool, UK, and then put back on the Earth. This wasn't the last time he encountered aliens either. He spotted an alien at his apartment in 1974, and then, later, he said he was visited by 4 bug-like aliens while he was in bed with a sleeping Yoko Ono. Lennon told his friend Uri Geller that the aliens had given him a silver egg. Some conspiracy theorists say that the reason Lennon was murdered was because he came too close to the truth about extraterrestrials. Wow. Coming in at number 9, we have the Phoenix Lights Incident. In March 1997, just over 20 years ago, a lot of people from Arizona and Nevada in the United States, as well as many people from northern Mexico, reported seeing large spherical lights of different colors in the sky. Many say they saw red, orange, yellow, and white lights flying around with no explanation. Many credible sources came forward to say that they had seen the lights, including the Arizona governor, Fife Symington. He said it was bigger than anything that he'd ever seen, and it remains a great mystery. Interestingly, some people reported an amnesia-like state following their exposure to the lights. Up next, we can't have an alien encounter without mentioning Roswell, can we? Roswell! Recently, a US Army vet broke a 44-year-long silence about his personal Roswell experience, something that he says will haunt him for the rest of his life. Roswell, of course, is the name of an event that saw the US military sensationally announce that they had found a crashed UFO in Roswell, New Mexico, only to retract the statement the next day. So what was going on? The unnamed former Air Force pilot gave his account of the event in Roswell that to him happened 24 years after the original sighting. He said that he and around 500 military personnel spotted 2 UFOs flying in erratic patterns for 5 hours straight. Weird. Up next, we have British children's author Mike Oram. Up until he visited Area 51 in Nevada, Mike's experience with aliens had been wholly positive. Mike said that he had a space brother, like a guardian angel who looked out for him since he was a child. Mike said that he regularly saw UFOs flying over Essex near London in the United Kingdom. Fascinated by aliens, he and his wife wanted to go to the ultimate alien hotspot, Area 51. When they approached the off-limits top-secret American base, Mike claims he and his wife were abducted by malevolent aliens intent on harming them, but luckily, his guardian alien angel rescued him. Mike revealed that there are good and bad alien tribes. Some of them want to help the Earth and others want to harm it. Mike said that he spent 3 days vomiting up white powder after his experience, and that his wife said that she would never ever set foot in America again. Coming in at number 6, we have Double Trouble. A set of twins, Audrey Hewins and her identical twin sister Debbie, said that they were visited by aliens from the age of 5 at their home in Ohio. The pair said that the aliens started experimenting on them at age 12, and they had countless experiences with what they described as bald men. Audrey recalled her and her sister saying to their parents, "We don't want to go to bed as the bald men are coming." They had some kind of gut feeling as to when their next cosmic abduction would be. Audrey claimed the aliens also once saved her from drowning. Next up at number 5, did you know that chess was invented by aliens? Kirsan Ilyomzanov, the president of the World Chess Association, is 100% certain that he was abducted by aliens. He said that on a September evening in 1997, he was abducted by aliens in yellow suits suits who pulled him up to their spaceship and gave him oxygen. He spent the day in outer space and describes the aliens as people like us with the same minds and the same visions. There's a really great interview with him and Al Jazeera on YouTube where he speaks very frankly and in detail about his experience. He even says that he thinks chess came from outer space. Coming in at number 4, we have a hybrid human. A 6'3" blonde female Canadian believes that she was implanted in her mother's womb as a surprise to her twin brother when her mother was 8 months pregnant. There is a really good video interview with Lisa on YouTube with 1.7 million views. Francophone Lisa from Quebec uses a translator to help her tell her story. She says her mother decided to go upstairs to have a lay down when she was pregnant. When she lay down, she was paralyzed and saw a metallic grey object. She saw 2 small human beings with bug-like eyes and heard them say, "She's not ready," whilst another said, "Yes, she is." Lisa's mother was unaware at this point that she was expecting twins. So far, the doctors had only seen one baby, so that's what she thought she was having. Many years later, Lisa's mother believes she was visited again, this time by an alien doctor who told her that aliens had all of the cures to human diseases, but it would not be administered as humans were not supposed to be sick. Lisa herself believes that she is a hybrid human and has psychic powers. She also once experienced the feeling of being a lizard. Talk about close encounters at number 3, this man claims to have had 40-minute-long sex with a 3-meter-long female alien. Chinese farmer Meng Zhaogu was working outdoors in Wuchang, China in 1994. This was when he saw a metallic shimmering object near the mountains. He feared it was a downed helicopter, but his fears were soon alleviated when he blacked out. The next thing he knew, he was having sex with a 3-meter-long alien with 12 fingers. Meng said following his raunchy encounter that he was afraid of anything made out of iron. Weird. The police were suspicious and conducted a lie detector test, which he passed. I mean, if you think that all of the above was weird, then our number 2 insane alien encounter is from a woman who claims to have 10 alien children and to have had extremely primal sex with lizard-like aliens. Bridget Nilsson, who posts videos on a channel called Hybrid Children, claims that she is from a family lineage of alien collaborators. She says her grandparents were abducted and her mother too. She says that she regularly visits a spaceship, and when she was old enough, she had alien children. She explained her alien lovemaking, saying, "It was great. It was an incredible super primer, super raw, super sexual experience." She said there was really a lot of freedom and we were really going for it. It was the best sex I ever had. There we have it. Finally, at number 1, we have the infamous tale of Travis Walton, perhaps one of the best known and most insane alien abduction stories ever. In 1975, 22-year-old Travis Walton was working as a logger in the Apache Stigreaves National Forest in Arizona when him and his crew came across a spaceship. While his work crew begged Travis not to approach the steely grey object, he did, and it had dire consequences. Travis' story goes that he was struck by the object as it took off, killing him, but amid a humanitarian plight to save him, the aliens took him on board and brought him back to life. During this time, Travis was missing for 5 days, and police officers even suspected his workmen of killing him. Walton remembers seeing bald, short creatures in a hospital-like room, and then remembers nothing until he was found walking along the highway. He and his workmates all took lie detector tests and were found to be telling the truth, according to the test anyway. Travis's story led to the creation of the 1993 movie Fire in the Sky. Wow guys, so that was the top 10 insane alien encounters, and I have to say, my mind is blown. What really strikes me about this whole thing is that a lot of these alien encounters seem to come from the southern United States. Is there something that we don't know? I don't know. Do you guys believe in aliens? Let me know in the comments section down below.